We're going to take you on a journey.
Look, to be honest, there was 2 days I laid on my bathroom floor.
I can't believe I'm crying already.
So I can't imagine the grief of a parent who loses a child.
And you be the greatest version of you, then I feel like my work is done.
Hi, I'm Tam Wrigley and welcome to the Beyond Beautiful journey. Today on Beyond Beautiful, we have one of the most inspiring women in business. She was the first female on the board of directors and chairperson for IGA. She is the president of the Sunshine Coast Business Women's Network. She is the board director for Montrose Therapy and Respite Services, and she owns 6 IGAs. She is a woman killing it in a male-dominated industry, but amongst all of this, she was dealing with death, suicide, and the potential loss of her own child. We bring you Roz White. Roz White, welcome to the couch.
Thank you.
I love your story and I'm hoping our viewers will love it as well. Can you take me back? You're a farm girl at heart. Take me back to you growing up on the farm, and did you, I guess, ever envision that you would end up at 50 owning, I think it's now 5 IGA stores and being this corporate mogul on the Sunshine Coast? So take me back to the farm days.
Oh, no, but that's a long time ago now. Yeah. Very happy memories growing up on the farm, very carefree. I think that's the thing, kids that grow up in a rural environment, you know, that sort of sense of being carefree, riding motorbikes, riding horses, getting on a tractor. It almost brings a fearless element to your life and to your existence where you just kind of get on and do it.
Yep.
And I think that has actually held me in good stead for life itself, because often if there's a challenge or whatever, that's the mentality, that's the approach. Just get in there and get it done. But yeah, look, grew up with 4 brothers and 3 sisters, so
It was a big
lots
family.
and you know, I was a bit of a tomboy in the day. You know, I had 2 older brothers, so I was heavily influenced by, you know, I'd be under the house driving tractors, or you know, we'd be making roads and all sorts of things under the house, and building cubbies, and you know, on the horse, bareback, running around. It was good happy life.
Growing up, what was your aspiration? Like, what did you want to be when you grew up? When you were sitting there at 10 going, I want to be, what was your answer? A nurse.
My mum and my sister were nurses, and that was what I was going to be. So when I was a little girl, that's what I thought I would do, grow up and be a nurse. And, you know, I'm way far from that, and thank goodness.
Yeah. You entered what I would probably class now, you know, now as a man's world, you know, in the property development, and you, as we mentioned before, you've got 6 IGAs. What is it like dealing with that aspect of you're a woman coming into a man's domain?
Fairly natural for me, because I grew up in that way. So I don't even think about it, to be honest. It's really just about getting on and getting the job done. And you know, the grocery industry in particular, at the highest level in the leadership, senior leadership, it's still fairly male dominated, but everyday life is lots of, you know, families, and our customers are just, you know, families and people and mums and dads and whatever else, you know, children. So that's not too different. But yeah, certainly the construction side of things, you know, when I was on site at Baringa a couple of weeks ago, I walked in and here's this young 21-year-old, however she, you know, young woman getting around, and she was actually one of the tradies there, and it was like, oh, hi, great to see you here.
Yeah, because it usually is a male-dominated industry, and we don't see too many females stepping into those roles. And I guess even, you know, the corporate level as well, as having women in corporate, you know, it's that whole, and I think you and I were at the same breakfast that we were talking about with Rebecca Give Me, and she was saying it should, you know, it should be this we too, you know, and we as
powerful
people, should be banding together.
Absolutely, that was such a powerful message, and it is actually something that I took on board from the point of view that because there's so much gender discussion, we tend to, instead of let's not put stuff into a gender box, I think we should just talk about action, purpose. You know, those sorts of, that should be our dialogue. And so
I totally agree. I just think, I feel like, you know, there's been a lot of men bashing or, you know, gender bashing over the years. And I think it's all started from that incident with Harry, or was it Harvey Weinstein, you know, and it's just escalated from there. But I think, you know, there's accountability on both parts, and we seem to be forgetting that there are women too that are on that spectrum, and not only the men. And I so loved how Rebecca said, you know, it shouldn't be about me too, it should be about we too.
Absolutely, and completely concur.
Yeah. What's been some of your, I guess, struggles to get you to where you are today?
Yeah, there's been a few challenges. Most certainly, when I launched into being a grocer, it was certainly not something that I found exciting at all. In fact, I found it quite a chore, and it wasn't really by choice. It was something that we did. My husband and I bought a convenience store, a Maroochydore, tiny little store. I continued working in my corporate, I had a corporate background. I continued working, that was the way that we paid the bills, you know, and we were just making our way in business, a very tiny small business. We had 3 staff, you know, and it was we were completely green to the industry, so we had a lot to learn. It was a steep learning curve. We got on and did that, but I actually didn't enjoy it, probably for 10 years, 15 years maybe even, before the light bulb went on for me. And really the only time that I started to kind of change or shift, you know, it was a mindset shift, beg your pardon, where I went...
Say that quickly 3 times.
Yeah, no, at the end of the day. And so I guess it was acceptance from the point of view, I thought, right, okay, this is what we're doing. Here I was 10, 12 years in or whatever, okay, suddenly, light bulb moment. But what I did is took myself out of this and actually started to look at the big picture. Okay, well, what am I a part of? And when I shifted my mind from this, you know, what I was doing to what I was a part of, that's when things started to change for me, and that's when everything went from black and white to colour, and I started to immerse myself, meet people, get out there, learn more. That's when things started to really woof, and that's where it ignited this insatiable passion within me, and took me on this journey that I never ever dreamed would. Who would have ever known?
That was, and this is my question: is what takes you from owning a local grocery store to now owning 5 massive IGAs? You know, like, what was the driving force behind that decision?
Yeah, well, I hit some really tough personal times too. About 10 years ago, my dearest, most beautiful sister that was my best friend, and you know, 2 or 3 times a day we would talk to each other, and she passed away, which broke my heart. And about that time, it was the business and my work that actually was the thing that probably got me through. And when I threw myself into work, it kind of changed things as well, because I was so focused on that, because that was non-emotional. It was safe to focus on those things, because it wasn't, you know, it distracted me from my you know, heart-wrenching grief. And that's probably what also was a pivotal moment in a lot of ways that actually took me on this journey of being, you know, the chairman of the IGA board in Queensland, which is, you know, first female chairman in the history of the brand, and, you know, kind of very purpose-driven, and completely immersed in the industry, in what we did, and took me to the highest level, I suppose, on a national platform for our industry, and pretty much the sole female there, believe it or not.
How do you get, I mean, there's probably a lot of viewers who have been through grief like you have. I mean, losing, you know, even, you know, a parent, or as you said, you know, your sister, if you're very close to your sister. How do people cope? Like, how did you cope with that, and how did you get up out of bed every day?
Very difficult, you know, and it's almost like you do get out of bed and you put on the mask and then you go to work, and, you know, people rely on you. There's a level of responsibility you've got to maintain. You don't really have a choice, and it's almost like you go through the motions. And, you know, it'd be easy just to, and some days I probably did just stay in bed and, you know, not want to face the world or, you know, isolate myself in some ways. I mean, if you disconnect your emotions, sometimes that takes some of the good stuff too. And I'm guilty of, you know, going through those times where I had to disconnect, I had to isolate, and it's almost self-preservation. But how do you do it? You do it because you've just got to get on with it. You've just got to get on with life, and they would want that. You know, your loved one that's passed on, they would want that. So it's almost a respect for them and their life, because they're not here to enjoy that. They're not here, they don't have a choice, they're not here to enjoy that life anymore. So it has changed me completely as a person, because I just am, you know, grateful for the life I do have and live it for the people that can't.
Yeah.
You know, it's it does change you deeply.
Yeah. And you haven't just suffered, I think, one loss. Your brother committed suicide a couple of years after your sister passed away, and then you lost your father. So it's almost like a triple whammy for you. I guess for people that are grieving those types of situations, it's very hard for them. And they sit and they look at people, I guess, like you, that are extremely successful, and you do just get up and you do have to get on with life. But they do, I guess for them it's like how. It's like the how. How do I do that? They want to, but it's the how.
Yeah, no, there's no one silver bullet. That grief is a very personal journey, and the important thing I think that I've learnt, so I lost my sister, my brother, my father within 8 years. Each grief journey has been different. So there's not one way, there's not one channel of grief there. It's very personal, and every person endures grief in their own way. The most important thing is that when people are grieving, you must just let them grieve in their own way. And there's no right and there's no wrong, and there's no
time. Yeah,
it's different for everyone. You know, I don't. Sometimes I wonder how I got through. You know, but long walks on the beach. Sometimes, you know, our children. You know, the happiness they bring to your life, and focusing on them and what they bring to your life, to your heart, and their life's important. They've got a future ahead of them. It's focusing on all those sorts of things. My husband, and how incredibly strong and supportive, and you know, he was completely my rock. So when my world's falling apart, he's picking me up and lifting me up and supporting me, and you know, I couldn't have done it without him. He's unbelievable.
I guess our life is all, there's learnings throughout our lives. What have been some of your biggest challenges and your biggest learnings to get you here today?
Goodness me. Well, you know, there's been many challenges, and challenge and loss are completely two different things in my mind. Loss is, you know, traumatic, tragic, heart-wrenching, you know, things that you lose. That's loss.
Yeah.
When you lose a piece of your heart, that's loss. A challenge is what we all face every day, and there's all different levels of challenge. So whether, doesn't matter what that is, that might be a financial challenge, it could be, you know, time challenge or anything. So when I'm thinking or referring to challenge, to put things into context, it's normally associated with the business, or, you know, so some of those a day to day. You know, there's been a lot of times where we've been sat down on our butt. So many times where, and that happens in business, where you think you're going in one direction and then something will come out of the blue. You know, we've had businesses fall over, we've had financial loss because of that, we've lost, you know, but they're just loss as in challenge loss, sorry, not personal loss, just to clarify that. But, you know, that's kind of, to me, these challenges are expected in business, and you've got to have the resilience and the tenacity and the determination to go, okay, that's happened. What can we learn from it? You know, where do we go next? What's our plan B? Get back on your horse, off we go. And, you know, next steps. What are the next steps? So,
have you ever had anything like that's knocked you so hard that you just went, what am I doing? What am I doing?
oh my gosh, yes. How many examples do you want? Oh, I find over the years, most certainly, you know, and businesses and things like that you've invested in that you know, haven't gone to plan. Things that have come out of left field from, you know, mixed up with franchise licenses that, you know, have ended up resulted in, you know, franchisors working against you, ending up in court, in law, you know, in court and that sort of thing. But certainly, you know, businesses where, you know, major competitors come in and actually just almost wiped you out.
Yeah.
You know, those sorts of things, they're big.
Yeah.
And you take it really personally because you put so much into it, your heart's in that community and it's in that business. So you're invested, you're fully invested, and then you have a major competitor comes in, basically wipes you out, and it's like, yeah, you take it, really, you have to take it on the chin.
But it's hard.
But yeah, they're the sorts of things that come out and just knock you on your feet.
Do you often fear that
Off
now
your feet.
when you're building a new project or building a new IGA? Is that always now in the forefront of your mind?
Yeah,
is
very
that,
much so.
If I put an IGA here,
Yeah.
then either one of the big majors
Yeah.
might
Yeah.
pop up next door.
Of course, always. You know, you can never ever be complacent. And you always know the competitors are in, you know, it doesn't matter what you do, your competitors are always there. They're all active and everyone wants to be successful or everyone wants to sort of be the place to go, or, you know, it doesn't matter what your commodity is or what you're doing, whether it's retail or services or whatever, that's always the case.
Yep.
So you have to create a strategy that's actually going to combat that. So whatever you want to be famous for, so how do you create a sustainable model for the business, you know, that you have? So looking ahead 5 years, looking around you, what's relevant, what are the needs, the wants and the desires of your target market? Are you responding to them? All of those things, that's a continual kind of review, you know, looking within and looking at your strategy. Is it relevant? That's the most important thing. So our competitors could come in at any angle, whether that's a bricks and mortar store or online or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
Even things like Amazon, okay, or watching them, what are they up to, you know, what's the interaction, how the consumer's responding. But you can't let that put you off, otherwise you just do nothing, wouldn't you? You know, so you've just got to be confident in what you create and know that, hey, we're creating something pretty darn special nobody else is doing. Here we are, you know.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think, you know, even it's that, I think Deborah Hutton said it once to me, is like, I think the question was, what's your brand? You know, what's your branding or what's your brand?
Yeah.
And she said, your brand is what somebody says about you when you leave the room.
Yeah.
And it's like,
Powerful.
that's really resonated. So it's like, what are, you know, and I know the White's IGA brand has a phenomenal following on the Sunshine Coast because that's something that you've built and it's that reputation. Yeah. Totally.
Thanks, Tam. That's lovely. Yeah.
If you could go back and give your 15-year-old self some advice, what would it be?
Don't become a grocer. No.
Don't know 5 IGAs.
Don't know. I don't like to think I've got regrets in life. So what would I tell my 15-year-old self? Just get on that horse and ride, you know. Don't be afraid.
Yeah, don't live in fear.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people don't progress in business or start a business out of fear. The fear of failure, the fear of money, the fear of, you know, instead of just go for it.
Yeah.
What's the worst that could happen
if
you could become successful at it?
Almost calculated risk. You know, you can't really progress without risk.
Yeah.
But if you can do it in a way that's kind of rational, planned as best you can, you know, plan for the things you can control. Stuff will come at you from out of left field that you never saw coming, and that's the risk component that you maybe can't control. But just be like, identify the thing that you know in your heart. You know, do your research, know where you're going, and don't just, you know, you really need, it needs to be strategic. Yeah. You can't just go off and think that, oh, this is a great idea, and then hope it's going to work. It's got to have some, you know, structure behind it, and thought process and strategy and planning, and you've got to bed it in. You can't just expect a new idea to flourish because it's a great idea. It may flourish for a short period of time, but often you'll find that it'll probably fall over. You need the structure to keep it, you know, sustainable and effective and strong. And
What's some personal, I guess your personal identity? What's something that's like etched in your DNA that you're hoping to bestow onto the kids?
Yeah, probably a sense of compassion for others, considerate to others, being grateful for all of the things that we have been blessed with, and doing what you can because you can. And, you know, others are not necessarily always fortunate. There's people in our community that are vulnerable, that are challenged, that don't necessarily, you know, they haven't asked, you know, that's just been, sometimes they're just, people just are given a raw deal in life. And so if you have the ability to support particularly people that are so vulnerable in our community, have the empathy and the compassion to just go and help people for no other reason than it's the right thing to do.
There was a time when your baby boy was nearly not with us. Is he meningitis? When he was quite a little boy. How did you were actually sat down and told he's not going to make it. How does a mum
Oh my gosh,
cope with that information?
Well, first time mother, or first time parents, that was really heart-wrenching. How do you deal with that? You know, taken into that little room and said, you know, make any phone calls that you need to make. You know, here's a cup of tea, you know, in that back room in the emergency that, you know, you never ever want to have to go into. And I guess you just go into a bit of a blur, everything becomes a bit vague. And then, you know, I'll never forget, they said to Michael, one of you is going to have to go home because your son's going to be, you know, if he makes it through the night, you know, or the next day, one of you, you've got to go home and get your rest. So someone's got to go home and sleep, you know. And in my mind, Michael drew the short straw. Because imagine going home not knowing if your son will be there in the morning. And that was really hard for him. I didn't leave that hospital for 14 days. So,
When they told you that tonight, you know, he might not make it, what did you get to go in and sort of like, do you get to like just cradle him?
Well, not really, because he was covered in head to toe in, you know, tubes, and, you know, they were trying to just
keep him
keep him alive. And he was so ill that they could not even fly him to Brisbane in the helicopter. They just went, nah, he's too ill to move, so they had to stabilise him in the Nambour, you know, in emergency. And so you're just helpless. And then you're just watching, you know.
I know, you must be going out of your mind as it's still, like, you just want to, I can't imagine, and I often say this, like, I can't imagine the grief of a parent who loses a child. Like, it would just be horrific.
Oh, yeah.
At what point did you know that he was going to be okay?
Oh, it would have been, he had 2 steps forward, 1 step back, probably for 10 days. And the first day I knew he was going to be okay was when he sat up and ate a banana. And he hadn't eaten anything for absolutely days. He was in ICU, so that's 24-hour care. And,
How old was he?
23 months.
Oh, wow, yeah, okay.
And I had my little bed next to him. But he woke up one day, you know, this is the sort of journey that we're on. You know, you think, okay, he's making progress. And, you know, they had to grow the blood cultures and all that sort of stuff. So they just started treating him with whatever, that, you know, they didn't even know it was meningitis.
Yep.
They just started treating him because, you know, he obviously just pumping antibiotics into him, not even knowing what he was suffering from, because they've got to do the lumbar puncture, grow the blood cultures, identify what it is, you know. So there's a day by day, you know, it takes time to actually even determine what they're dealing with. And thankfully, you know, obviously he started to respond, but one day he woke up from a sleep, and it was just one of those moments where things were progressing reasonably well, and I looked at Harry and I went, something's wrong. And he sat up, and his eyes had crossed. Oh. Yeah, so it had affected this nerve in his brain where he had suddenly woke up with crossed eyes. And then it was that, you know, he could have been deaf, he could have had a permanent squint or whatever they call it, I think. So of course I've just gone straight into meltdown as a mother, and that was enough to kind of just sit me back on my butt again and you know, wonder what on earth was ahead of us.
What got you through?
Family, people. People showing, you draw a lot of strength from people. People show their support, and you draw a lot of strength from that support. So I think, you know, that's so important to remember and always understand. If you know somebody's going through a terrible time, you know, try and show your support, because you don't know what sort of strength that's actually going to give that person. And at that time, I drew on that strength immensely. Yeah. You know, from your own family, of course, your husband, you know, my mum came down and stayed at the hospital. And, you know, at that time, and you know, we had people dropping in, visitors and that sort of thing, whatever was allowed, but just people sending you their thoughts, a bunch of flowers, you know. It goes a long way.
It does,
yeah.
So Rosie, you don't seem to be slowing down anytime soon. You've just hit the big 50 this year, but what's next? What's in store for the next 50?
I've got a lot of things that I still want to do. There's quite a long list on my bucket list. In the immediate future, just finishing off the commercial development, which will wrap up. Well, the second stage will wrap up in the next month. Third stage of the development will start later this year, but you know, it should wrap up by the end of next year. The supermarket at Baringa will open on the 28th of August. The Mount Coolum redevelopment should finish up in about another month or two. So once we kind of got through that and I bedded in my new baby, we'll just sort of sit back and take a bit of a, you know,
reap some of the rewards that you've worked so hard.
Sit back and just take a breath. But I miss getting into the nitty-gritty of the day-to-day business, you know, and I think that's really healthy to always go back in, do a deep dive, what's happening, review stuff, you know, it's a continuous improvement approach. So I would always, I'll look forward to being able to do that, take a breath. I don't know how long we'll be in the supermarket game, you know, it's kind of like how long's a piece of string for us at the moment.
Could you ever see yourself doing something else?
Yeah, I'd love to.
What would you love to do?
I would love to go to uni and do my master's or MBA. That is something I'd love to do. I'd love to, learn more. I've got 100 things. I want to obviously travel. I've got a plot for a novel in the back in the back of my mind that I'd love to write one day. It's a fantastic plot, but I can't write that because can't get my mind into it. My mum's a published author, so you know, she's
the writing's in the genes.
Yeah. So
is it
you never
fictional
know.
or non?
Fiction?
Yes. Very
great
good.
plot, but I can't tell you. I'll have
No,
to.
we'll have to read it. We'll have to wait till we read it.
They're the things that I'd love to do. I've got
amazing.
more. I've got more in me.
Doesn't sound like you're going to stop.
Well, you know what? No. Hopefully not.
No. And I think that's the way you need to live, isn't it? Just keep going.
Yeah. My gosh, you know, it's that attitude of you only live once, and I'm not going to waste a second.
Absolutely.
Jam-packed every day. You know.
What more could have I done?
Yes. I don't want to regret.
Leave this plane. I think there's a meme out there with one, you know, sliding into heaven with a glass of wine and going, wow, what a ride.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
That's our Rosie.
You bet. Right on.
Thanks, Rosie, for coming on the show.
Thank you.
It's been great.
Thank you. Oh, goodness.